Build Your Business listeners. This is Matt Reynolds, your host for the podcast, and you are listening to what we are calling the legacy episodes. And really, these are the pre-episodes that really led to this podcast, the Build Your Business podcast. This is really my life's work and my brother's life's work in building your business. And so they were originally published in the Barbell Logic podcast as part of the Principles or Coaching Success series, but really touch on similar topics to the Build Your Business podcast: how to improve your productivity, how to set and accomplish your goals, deprioritize urgent tasks, to focus on what is most important to you, and most importantly, to become a better person and leader and business owner overall. I'm proud to bring you these podcasts. Again, many years of life's work, several years of podcasts, and several decades of business ownership. Hope you enjoy them and learn from them. You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship. Welcome to the Barbell Logic Podcast, another Principles episode. I'm here with my little bro, Chris Reynolds.
Hello.
Coming at you from Boston, me at the from the Ozarks, which is quite different than the TV show, but it's still good. And we wanted to talk a little bit today. So, man, this is an interesting topic for me. I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of empathy and compassion. And for me, I really want to relate it back to strength coaching. And we haven't even said this much in your background, but you are a pretty accomplished strength athlete yourself. Like, you were really into competitive powerlifting back when I was as well. And you're a client of Barbell Logic now, and you're just a middle-aged dude trying to keep up with trying to get away from dad bod, basically.
Best I can, yeah.
Best you can. But you get a lot of background on that stuff too. And certainly we don't have to relate all this to barbell training. But last week we had an article come out on the website about the importance of compassionate coaching. And it made me think about how in the strength and conditioning world specifically, everything's sort of divided up. There's a lot of it's so goal oriented. So you either see these like boutique type trainers who don't really do anything of value, right? They're just there to encourage you and give you hugs and tell you that you're wonderful, and you don't really train. And when I say the word strength coach, often people ask me what I do, and I'm like, well, I'm really kind of a private sector strength coach. The idea of sort of a Division I or professional strength coach is almost like a drill sergeant. It's a person that yells a lot or argues about the way we program or the way we squat or whatever those things are. And certainly quality of coaching and coaching knowledge matter tremendously. But if you're not able to empathize and relate to your clients, they never see the knowledge and coaching expertise anyway. They shut you down early. And so I wanted to address that a little bit. And then I think important for me to note is this doesn't come natural for me at all. In fact, I think we've actually developed a reputation. I think I've developed a reputation even of a very empathetic strength coach. And I think I am, but I've had to work very hard at it. It hasn't come naturally to me. Would you say that you are naturally empathetic?
Yeah, I am.
And why do you think that is, or what makes you say that?
Well, it's a blessing and a curse, actually. I took a test, actually, for those of you that heard the sort of the interview with me and my background. I actually took a test when the most recent capital partner came in that sort of did a personality test for us. One of them was emotional intelligence. And I sort of suspected that mine was fairly high in terms of on the empathy side of that, which also is the source of much of my own anxiety.
Sure.
But I have the ability to read an awful lot from interaction with another human being, both tone of voice, face, all these things. I'm getting, 20 times the amount of information that your typical extrovert would. And so, and I knew that already. I sort of knew that would probably be the case, and the test results came out that it was.
Yeah. So what do you feel like when you recognize, man, I'm more than average on the empathy scale? What does that look like for you, for like your own sort of feelings and the way that impacts your life?
So, when I'm in the room with somebody who's experiencing strong emotions of any kind, I tend to think of it like my mirror neurons that we all have to one degree or another are firing at just an incredible pace. So if I'm in the room with someone who's extremely angry, I am very, very, very uncomfortable because I feel that anger with them.
Right.
The same would be true if they're extremely sad or whatever. I'm always reading the room, and I think the source of the difficulty with that around empathy is I'm trying to, because I feel the intensity of the emotion that they're feeling, I also try to bring the intensity level down for them, which is difficult to do because I'm feeling it as well.
That's a great example, because that example shows for me why and how, or at least by experience, that I am not naturally empathetic. I am a super extrovert, a super type A guy. I can be very much goal-oriented, goal-driven. And there are times when I'm in the room and I am trying to control the room. And afterwards, Rachel's like, "Did you notice that the person had a stroke in the corner of the room and the EMTs had to come in and carry it?" I was like, "No, I didn't." "Who?" And she'll be like, yeah, somebody actually died like 6 feet away. Actually, true story. It just reminds me, back when I was a junior high school teacher, I had a couple buddies who were also junior high school teachers, and you had to stand out in the hallway before school every day just to kind of monitor the hallway. And so I was talking to my buddies who were coaches and teachers in the hallway, and it was just a completely normal Tuesday morning. I went to class, and about third hour, the assistant principal, who was a great guy who handles the discipline, calls me. He's like, "Hey, your conference hour next hour, can you come up and see me?" And I was like, whoa, I don't like that. I said, "Did I do something wrong?" He said, no, just come. It's not anything really bad. Just come. Okay. So I go down to his office on my conference hour. He's like, "Hey, I want to show you the security camera for a second." And so he pulls the security camera. He's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "That's me having a conversation with my buddies." He's like, "Watch this kid." This kid runs up to another kid 3 feet away from me, hits him in the face as hard as he can, and drops his ass in the middle of the hallway. No. Never noticed.
That's terrible.
He's like, "Do you know why we have you guys monitoring the hallways in the morning?" I was like, "Oh, sorry, bro. Sorry about that." So, however, because I really do, as what has happened, especially over the last 10 years, is one, as I have gone through some really hard things in life, like that have to go through the tragedies and the triumphs and like all of these things, I kind of feel the gravity of the weight of life. And so now when I am around people, or especially when I am focused on the relationship, and that extends certainly to my staff at Barbell Logic, but also very much to almost all of our clients. And I find out that there is a problem with X. Now, maybe that's not even us. Maybe it's just something. It like their wins are my wins, and their losses are my losses, and that can be a very emotionally exhausting. But what it's done for us, I think, is it's really set us apart at Barbell Logic as being the strength coaches who are a people company, who are about empathy and compassion. So, if you haven't had a chance to read the article about coaching with compassion, this isn't something that a type A person can check the checkbox. It doesn't work that way. It's inauthentic. And so until you really can put yourself in the shoes of that person, you can be inauthentically empathetic, but I think often people will read right through that. And until you can actually put their shoes on and say, like, I feel what you're going through, then you're not going to be able to connect. And I think for me, my experience, and we've had Dr. Pewter on the show, is an incredible psychiatrist, it's probably the single most important thing for human connection, right? Is empathy and compassion. And it's lost in the strength and conditioning world. You wouldn't say this. You started to sort of put your big toe in the water because I know you won't brag about yourself, but most people are either high IQ or high EQ, and it's very rare that they're both. And you're both. And you're not a genius on the IQ scale, and I'm not either, but we're above average significantly. But you're also way above average on the EQ scale. And that was one of the things that was interesting, I think, for the capital partners that came on for you. They're like, we're not used to seeing guys that are high on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what to say about it other than it's something that I both have. I think everybody has some amount of those qualities that they're born with, but you also have a lot of work to do on both. I mean, when you think about the IQ side of that equation, I mean, we've talked a lot about reading. I read incessantly so that I can learn more and more and more and more. But the same is true on the EQ side. There's a lot about, there's something that ties those two things together.
Yep.
And that thing is curiosity. Truthfully, at the core of empathy is curiosity. It's curiosity about what the other person is actually feeling.
Yeah.
And why they're behaving maybe in a way that they are behaving that you don't understand. And there's something almost, it's incredibly uncommon for people to suspend judgment on somebody else while they attempt to read what they've done versus, trying to judge what they're seeing. And that concept is essentially called separating observation from interpretation. And there are a lot of books written about this, but there is a quote that says the highest form of intelligence is the ability to separate observation from interpretation.
To fully observe.
Yep.
Without the judgment, at least to reserve it for later, to just be able to hone in. One of the things I've noticed for myself and for other people who have maybe aren't naturally gifted at this like you are, is if I'm in a conversation with somebody and while they're talking, I'm thinking about the thing that I'm going to say next. That is a complete lack of empathy. That is, I don't really care about what you're saying. I'm already formulating my response to the thing you're saying. And so it's not really listening, and it's certainly not really hearing them, and it's not being empathetic to their needs. And so actually one of the things that's really taught this is in my own marriage. Like Rachel and I for a long time, Rachel and I have been best friends for years, but we had a hard time. We struggled about a decade ago with conflict. We conflicted poorly. And I don't know if it was both people were trying to win the argument, but it wasn't healthy conflict. Now, we weren't like hitting each other in the head with pans or anything. There was but it was just, the conflict would escalate. It would never de-escalate. And we went to a phenomenal marriage counselor, and she taught us how to really listen to the other person. And the only thing that you were allowed to say after the person spoke, after your spouse spoke, was to repeat back to them what they said, which is amazing because when you listen to somebody talk and all you're thinking about is, I'm listening to you so hard that I'm going to have to repeat back what you just told me. I'm going to put it in my own words, but I'm going to say back to you what you just said. And this is the way it would work. Rachel would say something to me, and I would say, what I heard you say was, and I would say the thing, and she would go, that is not what I said at all. And then the counselor would say, okay, Rachel, say it again. And she would say it, and then I would go, okay, what I heard you say was, and then she would go, yep, that's it. And then the counselor would say, okay, Matt, would you like to respond? Yes. And then same thing. And I would say something, and then Rachel would have to repeat back to me what I said. And it was painfully slow, but what it allowed us to do is to never escalate the conflict. Because so much of what you do is you read the body language or something, and you misinterpret you're not actually trying to listen and hear. And it's crazy how much I've taken from literally my relationship with my wife, who I've been married to for 20 years, and how much of that is sort of layered on top of my relationship with my clients. When I hear my clients complain a little bit about some elbow tendonitis, or they didn't sleep very well the night before, Like that's what red flags go up for me. And I go, hey, let's talk about it. What's going on? And we're proud of that at Barbell Logic. We don't do it perfectly, but I think one of the things that are really important to us, we have people on our staff, their entire job is to manage in a healthy way, both internal relationships in the business and external relationships in the business or outside the business. And I think that's one of the things that's helped us separate ourselves. And so for guys like you, that empathy and compassion comes pretty naturally. For people like me, it takes work. And I know the saying of we have to be more intentional, or there has to be some intentionality there, has almost become a trite saying, but you really have to work on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
you do.
And at first, it might actually look like, as we do more and more of these episodes, there are times for me when my emotion doesn't match my action. And those are those times of white knuckle discipline. And there have been lots of times on the podcast in previous years where I kind of shit on white knuckle discipline. But the reality is that often we have to have it in the beginning. And my experience is that my emotion follows my action. So if I act empathetic or compassionate towards something that I'm not, over time, my emotions follow and I become actually compassionate and empathetic towards those things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think it's fake. And I think that if you're like that forever, you're a sociopath, right? If you pretend to be empathetic and compassionate for months and years on end, and you're not, you should go seek help. But for most people, I think the emotions often follow the actions. And so for me, the first step for me is just to be intentional about doing the thing, even if I don't really feel it. And what I've noticed is very quickly, within just a few days, my emotions and my feelings follow my actions.
Yeah, there are actually great studies that actually prove that is exactly what happens. I mean, they even did studies that showed that people who were particularly unhappy that smiled while they were unhappy had a hard time staying unhappy for a period of time. I mean, there's a large body of evidence about this. The other thing that I would say that's an interesting point that you brought up is it's not always that we misinterpret what's being said. I mean, I think that's certainly a large part of the equation. But one of the other things we have to be very careful about as we work on growing, getting better in empathy and compassion is not labeling people maybe at all, but certainly not too quickly. Sure. Because there's this thing, I mean, our brains are pattern matching machines. And there's this tendency that we have to say, you are a X, whatever that X is. And I know a lot of X's, and therefore I know you, and I know what's motivating you and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, probably, we want to do the best we can to stay away from sort of religion and politics and those hot button topics. And especially, I mean, again, I mentioned this in previous episodes, you and I disagree on those things, but I think regardless of what side of the spectrum you land on, most people would agree that identity politics has a tremendous negative effect on humanity. When I judge someone as you are this demographic, therefore I know everything about you, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And so, I think back to Martin Luther King Jr., who said, I have this dream that there is a day coming when my kids won't be judged by the color of their skin or the demographic they are, but the actual content of their character, which means just you, not based on anybody else who looks like you, who said a phrase like you, but that's an incredible thing to be able to do. And I think really that's what empathy and compassion bring out of us, is we're able to literally see the humanity in people and empathize with that and have compassion, even if they come from opposite sides of the spectrum of the political world, religious world, worldview, whatever those things are, and see them for who they really are as humans. And it's really pretty cool.
I think one of the easiest ways to apply it also is simply to turn it back to yourself. If you simply turn it right back on yourself, is there one label that you could put out and point to yourself that fully encapsulates you? Of course not.
Right.
There are all sorts of groups that we might say we're sort of a part of, or groups of beliefs and those kinds of things that we have. But in reality, we all have a ton of nuance to those things. So when we're relating to another person and we are trying to be empathetic with them, the longer we can delay judgment, labels, all of those things until we sort of understand that we actually are understanding what it is that they're saying or why they're behaving the way they are, the more successful we'll be.
Agreed. There you go, guys. It's another episode of the Principles Podcast on empathy and compassion. If you get a chance, take a look at that article on compassionate coaching. And gosh, we need more compassionate coaches. So one of the things that we think about for our future PBCs, our professional barbell coaches that we certify, is that is a big part of it. The psychology of coaching, the compassion and empathy of coaching is something that we take very seriously at Barbell Logic. And so for those of you who are clients of ours, we hope you feel that. For those of you who aren't yet, it's there. And so thank you for listening, and we will see you tomorrow on Monday for another episode of the Barbell Logic Podcast. See you guys soon.